This program is made possible by the loyal financial support of the friends and partners of Family Policy Institute.
You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world.
Good evening and welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us. My guest this evening is Graeme and Alison Schnell. I've got to get that right. Graeme and Alison Schnell from Focus on the Family here in South Africa. Graeme, Alison, welcome to the program.
Thank you for
Thanks
having
for
us.
having us. Yeah.
So you're traveling around the country speaking on the issue of marriage, which is such a critical issue in our country at the moment. And we're going to get into that. But tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing. You're based in Durban. You're traveling around the country at the moment, but what is your main focus?
Well, we're focused on the family, so our focus is on family. But really it's marriage, it's parenting, and it's youth. When we looked at just our strategic priorities, even around the world, marriage and parenting are critical. But in South Africa, we recognized that there was a gap with the youth, that the landscape of South Africa has so many challenges, so many kids growing up without parents, so many kids growing up without a model for what God's design for marriage and family is, that we need to speak directly to the youth as well. And so we want to help parents raise their kids with biblical values. We want to help marriages or married couples have thriving marriages that reflect God's design. And we want to speak to the youth, we want to build character into the youth, and then promote the value of marriage and family to this generation that for the large part isn't seeing it modeled for them. Okay.
Alison, the stats show that single-parent families are the majority in South Africa currently. Only 35% of children in South Africa currently live with both biological parents. That means 65% come from single-parent families or no parents at all. Okay, so we're really in a bad situation in this country. What is the solution? What should the church be doing today to address this critical issue?
Sure, I would say it's a big issue to address, but I think, just as Graeme was saying, building into the youth, creating this realization that having a married mom and dad is a beautiful thing, and it's God designed, and it actually creates a family unit that is safe for children to grow up in. And I think if we can speak to the youth before they even get there, let them realize that marriage is beautiful and it is part of God's plan, they'll be aspiring to marriage.
Which is not currently the situation.
It's not currently the case.
Why?
Fact,
because they're experiencing this bad example of marriage.
Absolutely.
And they say, oh, we don't want that.
They're not even seeing it modeled. So either they're not seeing it modeled, and so because it's not modeled, it's almost an assumption that they're never going to get married. They might have children down the line, but marriage is it's a neither here nor there. But if we can get them to aspire to marriage and family, then we'll be building back into that family unit, which then creates the safety and children, growing up with two parents in the home, and
which is God's design.
That's God's design.
But now marriage has got a bad rap. Marriage matters. Marriage is important. Why? Because it's of God. It's God's idea, not man's. And everything that God gives us is beautiful. It's good for us. But marriage has gotten a bad rap because of what people have done with marriage. Now, Graeme, knowing that marriage is the cornerstone of society, do you believe that the most important thing the church should be doing is teaching people about the sanctity of marriage, about the importance of marriage and family as foundational institutions? Because all of the issues that we're grappling with in society links back to the breakdown of marriage and family.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's an area that is neglected by the church, to be honest, and not because there's a purposeful neglecting of that. I think the church is busy with lots of incredibly important and powerful things that need to be doing. But you're absolutely right. The family is so vital, and I think it. When you say it is this incredibly incredible gift that God has given us, I think what the church needs to recognize and preach is this idea that marriage is, we better reflect God. We are designed to be image bearers of God.
That's
We're
right.
designed to bear and reflect His image. And when God created them, male and female, and then joined them together, we better reflect His very nature within marriage. There's something about the unity and the fellowship and the intimacy and the union that the Trinity experiences, that we experience in marriage, that is a reflection of His nature. And I think that sometimes we miss that. We think it's just it's a one option, and certainly there is another option of singleness and celibacy. But for the most part, it is God's design, and it's His beautiful gift to us that we can enjoy marriage, and in that actually reflect His very nature.
Absolutely. Now, Graeme and Alison, if we consider what is happening in South Africa, so many marriages breaking down, so many families breaking down. We have more dysfunctional families than we have functional families. And the carnage is evident in the stats that we see every day, right? So you look at prostitution, teen pregnancies, which is off the charts in South Africa at the moment, gangsterism, children on drugs and alcohol, violence, crime, you name it, all of it is linked to the breakdown of the family. So you guys are probably doing what is the most important thing that our country needs today, and that is going around teaching people to protect and strengthen and take care of their marriages.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it doesn't take much to convince anybody of what you've just said. When you just present it like that, people go, no, you're right. If we can get family right, we can get all of these other issues sorted out. And so you're 100% right. And that's really our passion, and that's our desire. And you know, what we're doing here in Cape Town from a marriage perspective is just speaking about communication in marriage. It's one topic. But when we look at the statistics of our research, when we do these events around the country, and we've been doing them for many, many years, but we looked at 4 years of taking surveys. We put a little survey form on everyone's seat that comes to a marriage event. And we gather data of which kind of people are coming to the events. But we always ask this question, what are your greatest challenges in marriage? And there's a bunch of things to choose from, 10 or 12, and it's finances and sex and in-law relationships, which we thought might be really high up on the list. But when we look back over 4 years of that data, the top 2 items were busyness and stress and communication. And we feel that actually busyness and stress is another area that impacts on communication. But so communication is something so vital that is so integral actually to all relationship, to community as a whole. But marriages are battling in this area. So just one topic to say, hey, come out for an event or listen to a broadcast, build into your marriage, because we want every person to just apply those principles that God has laid out in His Word, so that we can have a thriving marriage.
Absolutely.
That reflects His design.
Alison, do you think the media plays a role in just where women are today? Because a lot of women struggle with this submission issue. Submit to your own husbands as unto the Lord. And I notice even in churches, when I speak around at churches around the country, that when I say this, you could see some of the women stiffen. And I realize it's because of what is going on in the home. And the man is not loving his wife as Christ loves the church, which makes it very difficult for her to submit. However, it is God's command. It is from God. Wives, submit to your own husbands. And it doesn't give conditions to that, but it does help us understand that if we obey God and His Word, even when it's difficult, that God works through that. So how do we help women understand that?
I think women have a slightly warped view of what submit means. You know, in marriage, you are in a team, and the words might say, husband, lay down your life for your wife, wife, submit to your husband. Just as you referred to earlier, if a man is laying down his life for his wife, there is no lordship over her in that team.
That's right.
She is a partner. She is a co-partner with him. Yes, he is the head of the home, and so at the end of the day, the buck stops with him when it comes to, you know, accounting for his family to God. But I think women have this idea, or perhaps churches are giving women this idea that they must now come under their husband and just say yes, just let him rule. But it's not that.
No, it isn't.
It's a team. And so I do think that it is a beautiful thing when a couple can get this right, when a man is laying down his life for his wife and his wife comes alongside him and really just bolsters him and plays team. That's beautiful. So women need to get to that point where they're understanding, I am an integral part of this relationship. I mean a lot to my husband, and with my help, this marriage can be great. As long as the husband understands that he is not Lord over his wife.
Yeah.
That's the other key.
Because the Bible also says, submit one to each other.
Yes.
As unto the Lord. Submit one to each other. So husbands also submit to their wives, wives to their husbands, but God's order remains.
Correct.
That the husband is the head of the home, the head of the family, the spiritual head, the prophet, the priest, and the king, but that's not a lordship kind of a position. It's a responsibility to God. I'm responsible for my wife and my children, to raise them in the admonition of the Lord, to love my wife as Christ loves the church. And if a man is doing that, whenever I go to churches and I say, woman, tell me, how many of you would have a problem submitting to your husband if your wife loved you, if your husband loved you as Christ loved the church? And everybody says, we won't have a problem.
No problem.
So again, it's coming back to God's word and helping people understand when we do it God's way, there's only blessing. Right?
It is a challenging thing when it's one and not the other, and it can be both sides. And then you're absolutely right. We are called to be accountable for our position and our responsibility under God and the role that He's given us to play. So it is tough for a wife that's living maybe with a non-Christian husband, somebody who isn't laying down his life for her. But you are right in that there's nothing she can do to make him do that.
That's right.
She can only work on her part of the scenario. And the same goes for a man who might be laying down his life and he's battling with a wife that's not playing team. But we talk about the analogy of playing ping pong. And when you hit the ball with a ping pong bat, you can't control what the other person's going to do on the other side, where they're going to hit it. But if you put a little bit of spin on, or you hit it a little bit in one direction, you can influence how it's going to come back. And that's actually what we're called to do, and say, hey, we're going to play our part. I'm going to lay down my life. That's what God's called me to do. I'm going to love my wife to the best of my ability, and then watch how that does have an impact on the relationship. Even though I'm not forcing her to do anything, I'm just playing my part.
Okay, so that's the one aspect of our society, marriage and family. But I notice that a lot of people are struggling with parenting today. There seems to be a lack of information or guidance for people on how to effectively parent their children through the various stages. And so what we're seeing now in schools, we're seeing dysfunction in schools, and where parents are basically subcontracting the teacher.
Yeah.
You raise my child, you put the discipline in because I don't know how to do that. So we really have a challenge on our hands. So it's the marriage issue, getting that right. And the second most important thing is then the parenting. Fathers, and the Bible says, fathers, raise your children in the admonition of the Lord, which means it puts the responsibility squarely on the father to see that this happens. Of course, mom and dad do it together, but the responsibility to God, the commandment is, Father, see that this happens, that you model and raise your children in the ways of God. So that is a biggie. Are you dealing with this issue in the causes that you do as you travel around the country? And I want you to just hold that answer, because we're going to go to a break. When we come back from that, we're going to talk a little bit more about parenting, especially in view of comprehensive sexuality education coming into schools, targeting children, and basically undermining the values of their home, but yet God gives the responsibility to parents over their children to teach them the things of God. So more after the break with Graeme and Alison. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. I'm speaking to Graeme and Alison Schnell from Focus on the Family based in Durban. And Graeme and Alison is currently traveling around the country. We're sitting in Cape Town, in a church in Cape Town, speaking to them about their marriage enrichment cause. And Graeme and Alison, again, I want to commend you because for me, it's probably the most important thing that you can be doing now. When you look at the stats of the carnage in our families, marriages breaking down, families, and just the consequences felt by children all over this country. So we're talking about marriage, we're talking about family, how important it is, but we're also talking about parenting, that there's a lot of parents are taking strain with kids learning from the media, picking up habits and values that conflict with their values at home. And parents are kind of throwing up their hands and saying, wow, you know what, let the church deal with this, let the school deal with this. But that's not what God says.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think it's more difficult than it used to be 20 years, 50 years ago. And not that it was ever a simple, easy job. I think it's always had its challenges, parenting. But it's harder to be a kid in this day and age because of just the access to so much negative influence, through mobile devices, social media. There's this pressure to perform and to measure up, and there's bullying that can follow you not just in the classroom or on the bus, but at home with a smartphone. And so it's difficult to be a child, and therefore it's difficult to be a parent, and you've got to navigate all of these things. But I do think that it comes back to the basics. It's putting just some basic foundations in place, starting early, being intentional, which is tough because of the pace of life, and we're busy and we're managing schedules which maybe we didn't have 20, 50 years ago as well. But saying actually that this is a vital responsibility that we have in raising this next generation of children, having a plan, having a strategy, and then putting, as I said, those basics in place, looking at what does discipline and boundaries look like within our household. What does it look like to have grace? What does it look like to reward kids for positive behavior? What are our values as a family? And talking through those things with our kids so that as they grow, and again, the marriage foundation plays such a vital role in that. When kids can live in that safety that Alison spoke about, within the foundation of that stable home environment, that's half the work done already. And we acknowledge that isn't the case for everyone. And certainly as Focus on the Family, as much as we want to promote that ideal, we recognize so many people are facing challenges and they're parenting on their own, and we want to put an arm around them and say, we're here for you, we want to help you, because you're often doing a heroic job in raising this next generation on your own as a single mom. But there is so much that we can do if we apply some principles, and they are in God's word. And so part of what Focus on the Family does is just to say, okay, let's help you with these things on a daily basis through the radio. Here are some principles that you can apply in your home. Here are some principles you can apply with your marriage, with your kids, and then looking at the specifics. What do we do with technology and how that influences us? What do we do with social media and the influence of that on our kids' life? What do we do with communication and marriage to improve that? And that's our role. It really is to come alongside marriages and families and say, here are some principles that you can apply.
Yeah.
And when you do that, families work.
Absolutely. And there's people looking for help all over this country and perhaps not knowing where to get it. You raised the issue of the single mom, and they are in the majority, as I mentioned earlier, in our country, tragically. But Alison, what is your message to the single mom that often feels overwhelmed? 3 children, no father figure in the house, and has to manage this. What is your message?
Sure. My heart goes out to a single mom. Absolutely. It is the most difficult job on the planet, according to me. But I would say get into a community. Surround yourself with God-fearing people, because in community we can thrive. And I think just having another mom to talk to or to share the load a little bit. I'll have your children this afternoon, and then you can have mine tomorrow afternoon. get into community, even find another couple that might be able to come alongside you and just even have a male influence
Yes.
on your children, because it is so vitally important that a child grows up with some male influence and somebody to look up to as a male father figure.
That's right.
And you may find that in the church environment. So I would say get into community, but I'd also say, pat yourself on the back. You're doing a great job. You may feel like it's tough at times and you just can't handle the pressure, but as much as you can, build into those kids' lives. Show them how much you love them. Be there for them. Maybe slow the pace down a little bit. Don't try and overachieve. Rather slow the pace down and just be a unit as a family as much as possible, even though you're on your own. That would be my suggestion to a single mom.
Those are wise words, Alison. So we're facing huge challenges in South Africa on marriage front and family, with children. Then we have the added issue of, for example, comprehensive sexuality education that's coming in via the schools to teach children values that is not, consistent with the values at home. Again, from the work we do at Family Policy Institute, I get calls mainly from women, from moms, worried. What's going to happen to my children? My children are going to be exposed to this, and they don't want it to happen. So, and they're also obviously missing the dad in the home, the father figures, that they feel alone, like, how am I going to save my children? What is some advice maybe you could give them in this regard, Graeme?
Well, I'd say the first thing is that the responsibility of that education around sexuality is primarily the parents' responsibility. And so to claim ownership of that, and it is scary, and we recognize that. We hear from parents all the time. They'd rather farm that aspect of education out, quite honestly, but then they're also worried what it looks like when they have farmed it out. I'd say you've got to start early. And I think people are scared to talk to their kids. We've come across some really wonderful resources that will help a parent actually just guide them through how they can speak to a young kid, 7, 8-year-old, beginning to talk about this gift that God has given us in sexuality and what its design and purpose is.
And you guys have a program called No Apologies that you can help people with. So how would moms, single moms out there and people out there that need resources to help them and prepare them to speak to their children about these issues, how do they get hold of, for example, the No Apologies curriculum?
The easiest way is through our website. Our website's safamily.co.za, and from there you can get a little bit of information. What is the program? There's contact details to get in touch with us. We primarily run that program in schools, so that's been our target, is to speak to this grade 7 age child. So just at the end of primary school, before they head on to high school, with this curriculum. It's quite a comprehensive but over an intensive 2-day period where we can speak into the lives of these kids with both what is sexuality and what is purity, what is character, because we want them to understand that the decisions they make now in every area affect what their life will look like in the future. What are their dreams? What are their goals? So it's quite holistic in that sense. And then saying there is a better way to do this, and actually choosing to remain pure until you're married is the best thing.
Absolutely.
And then through that program, even at that age, grade 7, speaking about marriage. And we know, of course, we're not suggesting that they start looking for a spouse at that age, but we're saying we want to promote the value of marriage and family to even the youth, because we recognize so many of those kids are not seeing an example or model of that. They're living in a single parent home. Their friends are all living in single parent homes.
That's right.
So that they come out of this saying, wow, that's something I want. Part of my dreams and goals are not just, hey, getting a good job and making lots of money one day. I want to have a family. And that's what we want to achieve through that as well.
Absolutely. Marriage and family, the foundations of our society. And we cannot build a strong, successful, prosperous nation when marriages and families are breaking down. never mind how many government programs we throw at people, how much money we throw at this, it's not going to change. God started with a man and woman. God started with a family, and He built civilization on the family. And we have to get back to the basics. You look at here in the Western Cape, Graeme, for example, well, it's national, the problem, fatherless homes. That's your number one problem, fatherless homes, right? Everybody knows that. Our government knows that, even though it doesn't know what to do about it, but fatherless homes is the issue now. It's more prevalent here in the Western Cape. We have some of the biggest gangs in the entire country, gangs that consist of 10,000 members.
Sure.
All of those men in the gangs come from fatherless homes,
Yeah.
right? And the gang is an alternative family. That's
Yes.
what it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
And fatherless homes being the big issue in our country at the moment, one would think and expect that, the church would be focusing in this area, focusing on the fact that fatherless homes is causing chaos in our nation. There's carnage all over. Our prisons are full of young men that come out of fatherless homes. And, even if we started a program where men in the church would be father figures of people in the community or something, but we've got to deal with the situation because it's not going away, and God calls us, the church, to address these issues. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I like what you say about playing that role. Mentorship can be incredibly powerful.
Correct.
And just saying, I might be in the position where I am a father to my kids and we're in a stable home, but how can I come alongside maybe another child that doesn't have a father in the home? And so I really think that there's a lot that the church can do if we start speaking this language. So really encouraged by what you're doing, and just I think it's fantastic to be inspiring and encouraging and challenging the church to say, this is important, this is vital, we need to do more in this respect.
Absolutely. So I want to thank you, Graeme and Alison, because again, my heart and my focus is family. Focus on the family. Family Policy Institute has been established to defend the family, to promote family, marriage as the cornerstone institution of society, family the foundations. And we cannot build a strong society. And we see everything that goes wrong in South Africa, almost all of it you can link back to family breakdown and dysfunction. And so what you guys are doing is so important. Traveling around the country and just teaching people to look after their marriages, putting resources out there like No Apologies and all those kind of things. You really scratching where it's itching at the moment. So God bless you in your work. We're going to put all your details on the screen, your website, contact details. So people that need resources, when we invite you, come and speak, help us with our marriages, our families, help us in parenting, they can contact you. Thank you for tuning in tonight, and God bless you.